Danielle Cook is a culinary educator, nutritionist, cookbook author, and presenter. She has been leading cooking demonstrations in the Washington, D.C. area for over 20 years. She directs her own teaching kitchen, where she instructs individuals on taking charge of their nutritional health while having fun cooking. We're delighted to have her with us today for some spring recipes, so please help me welcome Danielle. Woo!
Thank you, Libby, and hello, everybody. It's great to be here on this rather cloudy afternoon here in Washington, D.C., wherever you're signing in from. I hope you have good weather and you're enjoying the wonderful time of spring. I'm here in my kitchen. You can see I'm surrounded by all the ingredients we're going to be working with today. Some wonderful asparagus and, of course, strawberries. It is strawberry season. I've been meandering my farmers markets and enjoying what's coming in. Strawberries are looking really, really good this year, and I've got my fingers crossed that we are going to have a good, lengthy season of strawberries. You never know with the weather. So today I'm actually going to be doing two recipes that will get you your greens and get you your fruits. And these are fun, easy to prepare recipes that are very colorful in their own way. The salad really speaking to spring in its different hues of green. And then the strawberry crostini, which looks like $1,000,000, and you will be able to prepare this in record time and just wow your friends and family with this wonderful little playful food. And we'll talk about more when I get to that point about how you would serve this. So for starters, we're going to begin with our crunchy iceberg salad with asparagus and peas. Very, very spring-like ingredients. And we will start by taking a look on my counter on my overhead camera so I can walk you through all the different steps of this. So asparagus, as I mentioned, peas. If you can find fresh garden peas, English peas at the farmers markets, go for that. I haven't seen any just yet come in, so I'm actually using frozen peas, which is completely fine. I personally find that the peas that are bagged and ready to go and pre-rinsed in the grocery store do not have very good flavor. I find them they can be a little bit kind of dry. So I would prefer to use the frozen peas over the ones in the store, only because these peas and berries as well have been picked at the height of their ripeness. So there's really nothing wrong with using the frozen. That said, if you see some beautiful ones in a farmer's market, grab those, because they will be the ones that have traveled the least to get to your kitchen. And that's a good thing, because they will be more flavorful and more nutritious. So the first steps to this recipe are to work with our asparagus. And the way I like to prep asparagus is I take them one by one and I just pop them, and the asparagus will separate where the softer, more tender part of the stalk is. This you can hang on to because you can actually use this for soup. You could put it in vegetable broth as well. So it's not completely a worthless piece of the stalk. In the event that you're not going to reuse it, please think about composting, because that's always a good way to discard these ends and these scraps of fruits and vegetables. So we're going to just go ahead and pop the stems off one by one. And I do that one by one because if you do it in a whole bunch, everything has a different place where it needs to snap. So I prefer just to go one by one with them. And the recipe calls for one bunch, which is going to be about 1.5 pounds when you purchase it. And once you've done with the snapping, it's going to be closer to about 1 pound. Okay. So the next step to this is I like to cut the tips off first and keep those separate from the rest of the stalks. And I'll just do this in a couple of runs here. And I'm just going to cut them. You can do this one by one if you want, but this makes the work go a little bit quicker. So I'm just cutting just the tips off so you can see these are very delicate, and they would flower if they stayed on the stalk. This is asparagus is actually in the lily family, if you're not familiar. So you can see where the resemblance to a lily stalk comes from. So these we're going to keep separate, and do the same for the next batch. Put them in our little prep bowl here. And then with the remaining asparagus, I'm going to cut them at an angle. I think I'll do this fewer at a time. At an angle with a bigger knife. And I'm going to just do sort of these side cuts. Now, if you have a very, very thick asparagus, let me see if I can show you this one. It's actually not as thick as some of them, but you can also, if your asparagus are very, very thick, you can cut them down the middle as well, like this. So you would pop the end. You have the stalk. And if it's a very thick one, you can actually go down the middle. And sometimes you, depending on the age of the asparagus plant, you might get some that are very thick around. So you just slit it down the middle and then go at an angle, like so. Okay, so we're going to do the same with the rest of them. And then together with the peas, they're going to blanch in some boiling water for a couple of minutes. And blanching essentially just means you're going to very lightly, very, very lightly cook the asparagus. So they're going to blanch literally just for a couple of minutes. Because I've cut them into smaller pieces, this one I'm going to cut down just a little bit more. Because I've cut them into smaller pieces, they won't need but a couple of minutes of cooking. So together, they're going to go into some boiling water, which is right next to me. And while that is blanching, we're going to work on our lettuce. And the lettuce today is a wonderful hunk of iceberg. And with iceberg, you really don't need to wash the whole thing because it's just so deeply kind of connected. It's a little bit different than other salad greens in that regard. But what I'm going to do here is get rid of the core. And I am going to give it a little bit of a rinse on the outer part. And I bought this and I was looking, I was examining it yesterday, and it's an organic one. And there were couple little bugs and a little bit of dirt right inside the main leaves. So we're just going to give this a rinse. Just a little bit of a bath. Once I get it into some nice chunks. So you want to just chunk it. And it's also nice to put it in fresh cold water because it will kind of just brighten and perk up the lettuce and keep it nice and crunchy. So just a little bit of a rinse here to make sure we're not losing any of the, make sure we are losing any little bugs that might be in there. And take a close look at your iceberg and make sure that the outer leaves are not brown or kind of wilted, because if so, then you want to discard any of the outer leaves. And this one is in really pretty good shape. There's a little something or rather on there. It is actually pulling off a little bit of sand and dirt I can see in the bottom of my bowl. So we're going to just make sure that that's all nice and clean. And like I said, you don't need to pull this apart every single leaf. There's a little bit of brown here too, so we'll get rid of that. And that's that. And now from here, you want to just pat dry And we're going to cut it down into slightly, here's a brown spot. You want to get rid of that. That's how you can still use the outer part, but just pick off the brown. And then once these are chunked down, pat it, get the water out. It's not nearly as tedious to clean these as it is on certain other salads. And now I'm just going to do a rough cut, a real rough cut here. Now, the dressing that we're going to get to next is packed full of flavor. It's a great combination using the cilantro with these spring vegetables. Spring herbs are all going to be all over the markets coming up soon. I think we've got a good amount here. I'm going to add that. Okay. And our peas and our asparagus are going to join in just a moment. Get those off the cooktop. Here they are. They're bright green. They've simmered for a couple of minutes, and you really want to pull them when they're really, really bright green like this. You don't want to let them go 4 or 5 minutes. They're going to get overcooked, and they're going to turn something of an army green. So now, if you're serving this right away, you're going to want to dump this in probably in an ice bath, but we're going to just let it cool. And of course, as it cools, it's going to, if you leave it to cool in a colander like this, it's going to continue to cook a little bit. So one of the advantages to having an ice bath is you drain it and you plunge it into cold water with ice cubes, and that will stop the cooking entirely. But these, if I shake it around, the steam will continue to come off. And I'm just, for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to leave it to sit just like it is for a couple of minutes. Okay, now we get to the real yum factor, which is going to be our dressing. And our dressing is going to consist of a lot of cilantro. And this has already been washed, this bunch. So I need about a cup of cilantro. So with that, packed leaves, the recipe calls for packed leaves. Don't worry about sitting here trying to pick every little leaf off. You don't need to do that with cilantro. The cilantro stems are very fine and very tender, and they're full of flavor. So I'm essentially going to just rip off a nice chunk and pack it into my measuring cup just to kind of give me a guide of where I am. If this cilantro does not suit your palate, or you are one of these individuals who has cilantro tastes like soap, you have a choice of any other kind of herbs you might want to put in this. You could do basil, you could do tarragon, would be wonderful. I would suggest you could do a combination of parsley and tarragon. We could do parsley and cilantro here as well, but today I'm just going to work with the parsley, or excuse me, the cilantro. In addition, our dressing is going to have Greek yogurt, full fat. I'm using full fat for the really creamy, rich flavor. Some lime juice, some jalapeno, some garlic, and some olive oil. So before we throw it all in the blender, let's just work on the jalapeno for a second, and I will show you what I like to do with jalapenos in general. It's not just this recipe. So jalapenos are very unpredictable, shall we say. You can get some that are extremely spicy and hot, and others that have really very little heat to them. So depending on what your palate is, I always start by opening and cutting open the pepper in a manner so as to avoid having the membranes and the seeds attach themselves. And then, very important, you got to taste. You got to taste so you know what you're dealing with in terms of the heat. So this is very, mild, very, very mild, which is fine by me. I personally like a little bit of heat, but not enough to blow the back of your head off. So if you are a person who likes the heat, you would want to add some of these seeds and some of the membrane into the dressing. If you just want that kind of chile jalapeno distinct pepper flavor without a ton of heat, just use the flesh part. And that's what I am going to do. You can use 1 to 2 jalapenos, depending on how much, flavor intensity you want. The other option is if you're really, really into the hot stuff, try some serrano peppers, or maybe a little bit of each, because they have the peppers have different depths to how, to their strength and their flavoring. So this is actually going to go into my compost because I'm not going to need any of those seeds. And I'm going to rough chop the peppers to go into our little mini processor. I'm also going to do the same for the garlic. I'm going to smash it and just rough chop that. Okay. And now we're going to be transferring all of these ingredients into a food processor. This is a mini prep. You can use a larger one if you like. You can use one of the magic bullet things. This is going to make a fairly thick dressing. We'll have some lime juice in there that'll help kind of rotate things. But in any event, I don't think this is you could use a blender for this, but I don't think an immersion blender is going to be the best way to go with this. So we have, as I said, the yogurt, full fat Greek yogurt, and then we're going to put our peppers and our garlic. This is actually a really great dressing. You can just keep it in the fridge for a couple of days, and you can use it on other things. It's great on vegetables, grilled vegetables. Okay, and then we have our olive oil. Let's go ahead and actually next I'm going to pack our cilantro in there. Once we get going on this, I will say that it's going to be a little bit noisy on my end. So this is sort of an alert to those of you who are watching. I hope I don't startle you too much with the noise level. You may want to hit mute for a second, but this is going to run in order to really get all this properly mixed up. It's going to run for about 30 seconds. I will not be talking during that time, so I will not be sharing anything that you're going to miss. Don't worry. I just want you to see how this dressing is going to go, how it's going to transform from these separate ingredients into a very, very pretty bright green result, a real spring result, spring color. Okay, a little bit of lime juice. You could use lemon juice and some sea salt. This is really to taste. I'm going to start with about a quarter to a half a teaspoon. The lemon juice or lime juice, if you're using that, really can help. It works as a salt substitute. So you don't need a ton of salt in this. And now about 2 tablespoons, which is about 2 good squeezes of olive oil. And we're going to make sure we get all of our ingredients in there, and we're off to the races. You can see some of our cilantro didn't make it down in there. Look at that. Okay. Get all the flavor. Let's give this a scoop. Just clear out the stuff that's gone on to the top of the food processor. And one more round. All right, so we have a nice, thick, beautiful, thick, bright green colored dressing. And I will say also that as this sits on the salad, it's going to, the dressing will water down a bit. So I always like to serve this with a little bit of extra dressing on the side because this stuff is just so delicious. Yum. Perfectly balanced, actually. Doesn't need any more salt, doesn't need any more lime juice. Just really, really nice balance. So when it comes time to assemble this salad, you can do it a couple of ways. I'm going to show you today. We're just going to do it in one bowl, one packed bowl for that matter. But you can do this as on individual plates as well. It's very, very pretty just to plate up individually. And then just before serving, you'll want to add your salad, your dressing, or you can pass the dressing either way. So we have all the beautiful peas and asparagus that are practically completely cooled down. There's more than my bowl can hold, but that's all right. Just do what we can. This is a great salad to have on a, it really rounds things out very, very nicely because it works great with all kinds of different foods. You could do this with a grilled, you could do it with burgers, as a nice robust salad to go with burgers, grilled sausage, grilled vegetables. You name it. Now our dressing. Spoon some of this. So thick and yummy. And then I'm just going to kind of give it a little bit of a shake here to get the dressing to kind of settle in spots. And then what I love, totally optional, but I'm going to put a little bit of feta cheese on top. And this adds another level of protein. So you've got all the benefits of all these wonderful dark different greens that are packed with chlorophyll. The asparagus are a great source of folic acid and vitamin K and fiber and potassium. And your peas, similar to other beans, are good protein. Asparagus actually do have protein in them as well. And so you've got between the dressing with the goat cheese, with the Greek yogurt, and then the feta on top, which actually I was thinking goat cheese. You could also do a goat cheese on there instead. And then what I like to also do is just put a few little sprigs of the leaves from the cilantro just to add a little pop of more green color on top. And there we have our lovely spring green asparagus, iceberg, crunchy, refreshing iceberg with peas and asparagus. So with that, I will happy to take any questions or any comments that folks might have, and then we can go on to the next recipe.
Yeah, so we did have somebody ask, you had mentioned basil and parsley and tarragon. What about sage?
Sage is really much more of a fall and winter herb. I think you need to be very, very judicious with sage. I would not personally use sage in this recipe because it's got a very distinct flavoring. If you wanted to try it, it doesn't pair particularly well with those spring flavors and the crunch and the lightness of an iceberg lettuce. If you were to try it, I would say go very easy on how much you put in there, because you will find that it is a very, very intense, very potent herb.
Yeah, for sure. Very potent herb. Delicious, but in appropriate doses, I guess. Yeah.
Yes.
So you had mentioned the lightness of the iceberg lettuce. Is that why you're using it, or are there other greens that you could use instead?
So the couple of reasons. Yes, I like the crunch. I like the hydrating effects of the iceberg, and it holds up really well to this thick, this thick dressing. So imagine you were to do this with some baby spinach. That spinach would just get completely buried in the dressing and the weight of the asparagus, and the physical weight, not the digestive weight, but the physical weight of, you're putting peas and asparagus, you're putting, weight wise, easily 10 ounces on top of this salad, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So this stuff can really, this can hold up the weight. Besides that, just the texture, what we talk about is in the mouth feel of things. The texture is so important, and I think the crunch of the iceberg is really fantastic with this.
We did have someone ask about your blanching technique. Could you? I know it's in the recipe, but could you speak just a little bit about the technique that you use to blanch?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I did was I brought a pot of water, about maybe a third full, for a half a pound of asparagus and 1 cup of the frozen peas. Get this to a boil and just drop the vegetables in there. Get it on a medium-high heat, and then as soon as it comes to a boil, let it just reduce that and just let it simmer, let it perk for 90 seconds, 2 minutes. From start to finish, you want the vegetables in and out of here in 2 minutes, no more than 3 minutes. And so if you have twice the amount, I did what I showed you today was about half what the recipe calls for. So if you were to do the full amount, you're going to get a nice big size platter of salad. And you'll need a larger pot. And then in that case, you could leave the vegetables in the water for 3 minutes. But because the asparagus are cut thin, they really don't need a lot of time. So that's what I do. And then pour it off. And as I talked about earlier, either an ice bath or not.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. So this recipe has a fair amount of dairy in it. It's got the Greek yogurt, and you added the feta on top. So is there something you could substitute for the yogurt if you want to make it, vegan or dairy free?
Yes, absolutely. So you would obviously not do the feta cheese or a goat cheese on top. So that don't have to put cheese on everything. I know some people think like bacon, that cheese is a topping or it's an herb, it just got to go on everything. But so you would not need the cheese, do the cheese. And then for the dressing, I have a couple of different options you could use. One is to make a cashew cream. And if you're not familiar with that, it's really, really easy. You essentially take a cup of raw cashews and pour some boiling water over them, enough to cover, and you can let them sit, and it extracts some of the phytates into the water. You can also boil the cashews for about 10 minutes and then drain the water off. Hold back a little bit of the water, and then puree the cashews. And with that, you add back a little bit of water, or you can use just fresh filtered water, tablespoon at a time, till you get like a cream. And that you can substitute. You can substitute it 1-to-1. It's not going to have that same kind of tangy flavor that the Greek yogurt brings, but it will still give you a creaminess to the dressing. And then the other option is, if you didn't want to be bothered making a cashew cream, you basically do a very a sort of a vinaigrette. You do somewhere between a vinaigrette and a chimichurri. So you get all the herbs and the garlic and the lime juice and the oil all whizzed up, and you just keep working it with a little more olive oil until it reaches a real spreadable consistency. So a different kind of flavoring, but still equally good.
Man, all those options sound truly delicious. Yeah, cool. Thank you very much for all of those different ways that we could engage with this recipe. I think we're ready to move on to the crostini if you're ready.
Okay, I am going to actually just pop my broiler on while to let that heat up while we talk about the next thing. Okay, so we have strawberries to work with. Yummy, yummy strawberries. And let me just to the counter and to the cutting board. And we will start working with the next group of yummy spring ingredients. So I'm going to just set these here so you can just wish you were in my kitchen eating them. We're actually going to be working with these. And this has got a couple of different not angles, but different steps to this recipe, all of which can be done in advance. And then you just would put it together sort of right before serving. So we need about 8 ounces of strawberries. And the way I like to prep my strawberries, you might be well versed in this, but I'm just going to show you what I like to do. When people say whole strawberries, often they just cut the end off. That's not hulling. That's losing a lot of the great strawberry fruit part. Hulling means to get in there and remove the stem. And so in order to do that effectively, you need to go in with a good sharp paring knife and just go around and extract a cone. This is the part that you don't necessarily. Farmers markets start bringing in gorgeous, sweet, juicy strawberries. You don't want to waste too much of it. So again, so you can see there's just a nice little hole in there, and the stem, the hull is gone. So the next thing is a rough cut. And so this is a good job for little kids because it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the pieces are going to look like for this recipe. So, sometimes with strawberries, you do beautiful fan shape or you do a dice, but this basically, it really doesn't matter. I'm just going to do whatever, a small piece of crostini. So for that, keep that in mind. And so you can do some pieces that are going to be really very, very tiny and other pieces that are going to be a little bit bigger. But again, this is really a good, fun project or kitchen assignment for a little pair of hands. And when I work with little kids, I usually have them working with a serrated knife, which is it's got the rough serrated, because that is easier for them not to injure themselves rather than a very sharp kitchen paring knife. So this is the first step to this. You could even, if you wanted to, you could even bring out your big French knife and go at it, but not totally necessary because the strawberries are quite soft, as they should be. And so this then will sit in a little bit of sugar, and I like to use an evaporated cane sugar. You don't have to use sugar. If the strawberries are very sweet, they might not need anything. You could also instead use a little bit of maple syrup or a little bit of coconut palm sugar. So there are other ways, or honey. So there are other ways of making this sweet without putting a lot of table sugar, granulated sugar. Okay, last one. And then this is also, if you have extra, if you don't use it all on your crostini, well, my goodness, that's what the rest of the Greek yogurt from your salad dressing is for. You're going to put it all over the Greek yogurt. But I think you will see when we get done with this that there will be no leftovers on any of it. Okay. This is my cane sugar, my evaporated cane sugar. You might not be able to see with the coloring of the camera, but it is it's almost a beige color. It's an off-white, and the granulated part is a little bit bigger than what you see in what you get on a regular granulated sugar. So this is the cane sugar. There's a couple tablespoons in this, and I'm just going to use about half of it. Okay. And stir that around. You want to let it sit. We don't have the full, 15 to 30 minutes to let it sit, but you do want to let it sit to start juicing, because those juices are going to be another yum factor when this is all assembled. So we'll just let that sit to the side for right now. And then we're going to move over to doing our cinnamon sugar. So that is going to be, this is going to be the spread that's going to go on the crostini toasts. And for that, you're going to need, I've got some softened, unsalted butter. Make sure that's good and soft. And we're going to make a cinnamon sugar. So we're going to put a tablespoon of sugar. And depending on how intense you like and how much you love cinnamon, the recipe just calls for 1/4 teaspoon. But if you are really into the cinnamon thing, you can go a little bit heavier. I'm going to go ahead and just stick with the 1/4 teaspoon. And that gets mixed together. So this is the second step. So again, as I said at the beginning, these are steps to this that can be done well in advance, and then you just pull it all together when you're ready, just when you're ready to serve. Okay, so this is a pretty nice and grainy. It feels there's a good amount of sugar, which is good because we're gonna toast. We're making cinnamon toast. You remember that when you were a kid, having cinnamon toast? I remember my mom used to make it for our breakfast. Too much sugar going out the door in the mornings. But it will make a beautiful caramelized crostini. So there's our second point. And then our toasts. Okay, so these are little baguette slices. I have toasted the one side. So you want to get them so it's one side only till get it nice and golden brown. And then you flip them over. And then we're going to spread the cinnamon sugar on these. And you want to get it as completely covered as you can, right up to the edges on all sides. You need a nice amount because this is really the platform for the strawberries and the ricotta. So what a great combination. It's like a strawberry shortcake on a piece of toast. And again, this is another part we can do in advance. I do have some ready to go, but we're going to go ahead and toast these up because I want you to see how pretty they look when the toasts come out, even though we're going to cover the toasts up. But when they first come out of the oven, you're going to want to see how bubbly and golden caramelized they're going to become. So not too much of an effort. It's an easy recipe that's going to come out tasting absolutely scrumptious. That's what we're all about here. I love to bring ideas that are not only easy, but really, really packed with flavor. So I'm going to go ahead and pop these into the oven for just a minute, and then we're going to talk about the balsamic component, the balsamic vinegar component. Okay, So we have three more ingredients to put through on this. One is our ricotta is going to go on top. And then we have a balsamic glaze. And balsamic glaze is super, super easy to make. All you need is some balsamic vinegar. And this can be, you just pour balsamic vinegar into a saucepan and boil it, simmer it. And once it's simmered, this is an interesting thing here because once it's simmered for about 15 minutes, this was about a half a cup. And you can see it's become very, very thick in the bottom of my saucepan. And this is what we're going to use to decorate. It's great taste, very intense, but a great match to the strawberries. The other option is get yourself a balsamic glaze ready to go, store-bought. That works well too. If you don't want to go through the process of boiling the balsamic vinegar, or you don't have any on hand and you have a glaze, then use the glaze. Very, very similar. I like using the balsamic vinegar, boiling it fresh, just because I think it's got a little bit of a brighter, more intense flavor than the glaze. But the glaze is completely acceptable, especially since people have busy lives. And, you know, I understand you might not want to take that extra step. Okay, we're about to pull these out of the oven. I have some also that have been sitting. They're crusty, they're buttery. The caramelized has started here. So these I did a few minutes before we got on the air. But let's have a look at what's coming out of the oven. And I think we will make an attempt at decorating the ones that are coming out of the oven. Keep a close eye on these. They will burn very easily if you're not careful. Okay, and you can see how they're bubbled up. And just the butter is oozing through the little crevices of the crostinis. And you want to let them cool for a minute or two. I'm going to go ahead and transfer them carefully, hopefully without burning my fingers. Yep, they're nice and hot. And they smell, as you can imagine, divine. Woo! Andale. Okay. There we go. All right. While we let these cool for just a minute, I'm going to do the last little point, which we should not omit. Do not forget about our garnish. And we're going to have some very pretty little slices of strips of fresh basil. And the way I'm going to do this, I've picked the little tips off them. There are different ways to do it. This I like makes easy work of it. You gather it like a little bouquet, 2 or 3 stalks, the tips. Try to just roll them together gently. These are delicate. This is a delicate herb, so you don't want to smash it. Just treat it with a little bit of TLC. Very thin, what we call julienne or chiffonade. Chiffonade in French means rags. So it's like making rags of the ingredient that you are cutting. But this is really a great match to the other flavorings in this dish. So you do want to have some basil on this. You could put mint as well, but you wouldn't. You would have to go a little bit, less in the amount. Kind of as we were talking earlier about the sage being a very intense flavoring. I find mint to be also intense, depending on which kind of mint, because of course there are different kinds. Okay, and now this looks great. Let's go ahead and put a little dollop of ricotta on each one. And that will sink into the warm caramelized butter as well. You want to serve these either just tepid or room temperature. So they're not going to hold up really well. Like, you don't want to make them the day before. That would not work, because you want the kind of the crunchiness of the baguette, of the crostini, along with the caramelized, as the sugar caramelized under the broiler. The longer it sits, it's going to get runny, and then the bread will get a little overly soft. So you want to do these, have your ingredients ready to go, have your toasts toasted on one side. So all you need to do is spread them with the cinnamon butter and pop them under the broiler. And then you're going to put a little dollop of strawberries, pack them in there, just tuck them in there. It's fine. Some's going to fall off. That's all right. Somebody's going to eat it. And then you're going to have a very pretty combination of colors. You can see here the juices are starting to run. Oop. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, there we go. But they will get thicker, and there will be more of them as the strawberries sit. And you want to try to get some of that juice onto your crostini as well, because that's just more flavor, more strawberry flavor. We're almost there. One more. Not bad. And then I'm going to decorate them with the drizzle with my homemade balsamic all around. Another little spoonful. Doesn't need much, just a little touch. And then it's very pretty to have it, little drops too, on the plate. Somebody's going to go behind you with a spoon and gobble it all up. And then our very finely sliced basil. And I bet all of you watching are wishing you could just bite into one of these right now. And there 100%. We have.
That looks delicious.
Our crostini, full springtime crostini with basil. So these two dishes, they work beautifully together. And let's bring our salad back over. So they work beautifully together on a buffet, or as a dinner, part of a dinner. Throw some grilled proteins on the grill. Throw some proteins on the grill if you like, or just enjoy them this way, because certainly there's plenty of protein in the salad, and it is a filling salad with all the vegetables and all the greens and so forth. So with that, any questions? Any comments?
Yeah. So what we had someone in the chat suggest for the crostini, perhaps using mint with a dark chocolate drizzle.
Yeah, that would be yummy. That would be really delicious. A dark chocolate drizzle. Yeah.
Someone was asking how you could make this gluten-free. Like, are there other options for the crostini?
Yes. So here, you could do this. It would change up the texture a lot, and it would also kind of change. It would change the whole. It would no longer be a crostini, right? Because crostini is with bread. But you could layer this concept on a piece of cucumber, and you wouldn't be able to do the cinnamon toast concept. But if you had a good sized cucumber, you cut at an angle, you had like a nice wide surface, because essentially the crostini, that is the vessel in which we're using to try to get this into our mouths. But the combination of cucumber and strawberry and ricotta and balsamic and basil is all on par with a salad. So you could reconstitute this and just put the dollop of ricotta directly on a slice of cucumber and then build it from there. And that would make it really very, very delicious, but a very different kind of appetizer.
Someone was asking if you could also use maybe rye crackers or crisp breads.
Yeah, you could definitely a rice the little round rice crackers. Yep, I would stick with the plain ones. Maybe a sesame one could work. I haven't tried it, but I don't see why not. Yeah, don't keep it simple, right? Keep it simple. And again, using a cracker, you probably aren't going to have the butter and the cinnamon wouldn't quite work with that. But you know what you could do, and the same is true for the cucumber option. You can always put a little bit of cinnamon in your ricotta, so you do get that cinnamon flavor. You could also, if you don't want to do the dairy, you could put the cinnamon in your strawberries.
Awesome. Yep, I was going to ask you about a dairy-free option, so you beat me to it. So sometimes you see people hull strawberries with a straw. Is that a method that you've seen or tried or would recommend, or you really just prefer the paring knife?
I have not used a straw. I have seen strawberry hullers, but I have not used them because I'm comfortable using a paring knife. But I have not seen somebody do it with a straw. I think that might be a little tricky. It might be more work than it's worth, honestly. If you're somebody who spends some time in the kitchen preparing your own meals, I think just a paring knife is, if you're comfortable with a paring knife, to me, that's the way to go.
Great. Are there other fruits that could work instead of strawberries, or in place of the strawberries?
Okay. Well, yes, actually, you could certainly substitute any of your berries. This would work with blueberries. It would work with raspberries. You could even do a combination of things. And then as we get into warmer summer months, you could experiment with some stone fruits. This is really delicious with nectarines or peaches. You want to, again, doesn't matter how ugly or how beautiful your chopping is, but you would want to have them small pieces, small little bits, but the foundation is still great. So if you were to substitute, let's say, some peaches, so sprinkle a little sugar, do exactly the same thing, and that will pair beautifully with the basil. Or you could use a combination of a little bit of mint and basil. So yes, you could absolutely swap out a different kind of fruit.
Someone in the chat is asking about cantaloupe. Would you suggest that?
I'm not sure I would go with a cantaloupe just because it's, well, I mean, you could try it. It doesn't have, it's got such a more mild flavor than some of the other summer fruits. And I don't know how it would work, how well it would pair with the ricotta, but that's a really interesting question. I'm trying to think if I do other melon and that kind of yogurt. I mean, there are yogurt dressings for summer fruits that have vanilla and honey and yogurt. Might be worth a try. I mean, if you get a really, really flavorful cantaloupe, which can be hard to come by, it might be worth a try. But that's an interesting thought.
Awesome. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for being with us today. This has been amazing. Everybody is just drooling over all the recipes that you've made in the chat here. So yeah, wish we could be there to just eat all of them. Yes, so good. So thank you so much for bringing these delicious recipes to us. And thank you to everyone for joining us today.